Recording now.
Yep.
Welcome back to the world where we live, everybody. It's a few hours later, about 11 p.m. Time over in America, and we've already spoken to one interviewee who can't stand the president, or perhaps the president-elect for the next 4 years, judging by the results coming in. So now, just to give a little bit of balance, here is a Trump supporter. Evan O'Connell is a pilot down in Kaikoura, and I've certainly been watching his Facebook posts over the last year or so. Makes it pretty clear that he supports Trump and is no fan of Joe Biden at all. So, Evan, you must be feeling very happy indeed about the results that are coming through tonight. And
yeah,
you've been having a pretty good night.
yeah. So, well, it's been a very interesting day watching it progress. But yeah, I think we're all sitting on the edge of our seats at the moment. So it's right on the cusp, and it's been a hell of a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. So yeah, quite exciting.
In terms of it being close, now all of the polls that I've been seeing, that's your 538.com, New York Times, the mainstream media in America, all of them seem to suggest to me, I believe 538 in particular, predicted that Trump would win only about 138 electoral votes, or 158 or something like that. They were actually predicting a Biden landslide. Now, as it stands, right now, I'm seeing Biden has 220 electoral votes, Trump has 213. So just like 2016, he's smashed right through those predictions.
Yeah, that's right.
What gave you the impression that he wouldn't have as much chance as it turns out he has had tonight?
Which one are you talking about?
Trump. You reckon Trump would have a landslide?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Trump was going to have a much bigger margin than he has. I don't really go on the polls too much. I think after 2016, they seem to be too skewed. I spent more time actually watching the rallies from both the candidates, just sort of judging on how many people were showing up, what the level of enthusiasm was, the car rallies, the boat parades. Trump had a car parade 51 miles long. We had 47,000 people at his last rally in Pennsylvania. And, you know, tens of thousands of the Latinos for Trump showing out in rallies around the country. So Arizona, Florida in particular, upwards of 40,000 people each one. So I thought, yeah, he's going to do really well. And the one thing that Trump has done this time is he's got a much higher vote on the individual count going for the popular vote. He's already beaten the record, or he's already beaten what he got last time. So about 64,250,000 votes now. So, I mean, he's got more than he got last time. So he's definitely more popular along those lines. So that's a win for him. But yeah, of course, being the Electoral College, we just have to wait and see in especially these last 5 states on the eastern side of America, and just see how they play out. Yeah.
Well, heck, I mean, it does seem from my end here to be mostly a repeat of 2016 in the sense that he was vastly underestimated by not only the mainstream media, but I think just a lot of people had the sorts of with coronavirus pandemic, with the resultant economic devastation. There was even his name escapes me now, but he's basically a pundit that has correctly predicted all of the American elections since I think 1948. And basically he reckoned they went by all these keys. So basically, is it the incumbent's president seeking re-election? That's an advantage. Is the economy going well? That's an advantage. And on the other hand, if the economy was crashing, long-term or short-term or both, that was a disadvantage. If they didn't score as many keys, then, you know, we'd have a new president. Well, Trump failed this test this time, and mostly it was COVID. It was the economy. if it hadn't been for the economic devastation, they would have predicted that we would now be seeing a President Joe Biden. Well,
Yeah, potentially.
if we can't even trust that, then Trump is very much a force for change, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the financials were posted in the last quarter, and the GDP in America increased 33.1% in the one quarter, and I mean that's a huge growth for one quarter during a pandemic, the biggest pandemic since the Spanish flu in 1918ish. So as far as the economy goes, and they did a survey and they found 56% of people felt that they were much better off today than they were when they're under Obama with Joe Biden as vice president. So I was always asking myself, well, if you feel that you're much better off today than you were, 4.5 years ago, then why would you vote to go back to what it was 4.5 years ago? So again, some of these states, Ohio, they thought Biden was going to win. Trump's won, 8%. Florida, I think that was always a given. It was a lot tighter than I thought it would be, but I mean, he smashed that by what's that? 3.5% kind of somewhere around there, I think. Texas, and the Democrats were saying that Texas was going to go blue, but I think at that point they're getting a bit delusional. I think those guys love their guns just a little bit too much to go blue at the moment, but maybe in the future, you never know. But yeah, so I mean, looking at the map, I mean, it's very red, but I mean, the way those electoral seats get distributed among the states to make sure that it stays even. So it's really, I mean, Trump will probably come to it with a speech. I mean, Georgia, 91% counted, and it's right on the line there. It's down the middle. Nevada's still, that's been one to really watch this election. It could go either way. It'd probably go to Joe Biden, but I mean, it's right down the middle, that one. That's a really interesting one to watch.
Yeah, of course. I mean, a couple of points on Texas. Now, on the one hand, yes, it has been solid Republican country for a long time. But on the other, in the 2018 midterms, you might recall that Beto O'Rourke, the Democrat, ran against incumbent Ted Cruz, and he narrowly missed it. Cruz only beat him by 2.5%. And they say Texans love their guns, but however, there was also a massive influx of refugees from California fleeing that state, moving somewhere better, and there was a lot of speculation that they might change the voting demographic. It turns out
that's right. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. Why would you flee a Democrat nightmare into a Republican, wonderful place and then just vote Democrat anyway? It makes sense. But yeah, you're right. Dallas, Austin, Houston all seem to have swung, blue. But yeah, the rural counties definitely still strong with the Republicans. But yeah, there's a lot of counties in there that are up 95% Trump, 85, 95% Trump. So yeah, it's on a whole, still very red state, but it's the urban areas, and it seems to be that across the whole country. The urban areas seem to be going more blue, and the rural areas and the suburbs are the ones that are going red. So I think going into this, I thought Biden, if he had any chance of winning, he needed to focus on the suburbs. But
in terms of Biden as a candidate, what do you think went wrong with that? He was supposed to smash Trump. There were supposed to be so many Trump haters out there. Trump was supposed to have put so many people off that Biden would crush him, even though he isn't a particularly likable candidate himself. But my sort of view on Biden is, in a very convoluted kind of way, he was actually a safe bet for the Democrats. Unlike Hillary Clinton, he was not widely despised, and really all he had to do was get out there and not mess anything up. he messed a few things up. We got a few crazy gaffes out of him, particularly the
God,
"you
it was a
ain't
gap.
black" comment and everything.
Yeah,
It
every time he
was-
left the basement, there was another gap, and the YouTubers have just
yeah.
been having an absolute field day over the gaffes every time he did an interview. I think you're right. At the start, he seemed like someone. Yep, he could be likable. You know, he's been in politics. He knows the game. Um, and I mean, all he really had to do was sit there and say, "I'm a nice guy," and then just coast that one to victory. But yeah, the gaffes started coming out. The stupid comments saying, you know, like like you said, if you got problem figuring out if you're for
I,
me or
I
Trump,
believe, I
then you
believe,
ain't
I believe
black.
the comment was, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or for Trump, you ain't black. And
Yeah,
in that one comment, I think it betrayed what a lot of people already suspected about the Democratic Party. They take the black vote for granted.
yeah.
They
Well,
have
I
since
mean,
Lyndon Johnson in a lot of ways.
yeah, the only demographic of people in the world who overwhelmingly vote into one political party. You know, so there's guys on the people on YouTube, and they have made a lot of fun about that. You know, white people have figured out that you actually have a choice. You know, and I think this
Yeah.
election, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see when they break down the votes and to see whether Trump did get a huge amount of the black vote. But I think just looking at the numbers there, he's already got more, individual votes than 4 years ago. And that to me, I'd say is because he's got a lot more of the black vote. He's got a lot more of the Latino vote. And he's only on the popular vote. He's only trailing by 1 million votes. What did he lose? Hillary Clinton, 3 or
Two
4
point,
million votes.
it was 2.6 million to Hillary Clinton, but I think what was more of a big deal back then and more of a surprise was that if you 2016 and you saw the same thing this time around, if you were to believe everything you saw on CNN, you wouldn't think a single woman would vote for Trump. A single black person would vote for Trump. A single Hispanic would vote for Trump.
Yeah,
Women
yeah,
voted for him in abundance. I mean, any trip to the rallies could tell you that much. But I believe in 2016, Trump got 11% of the black vote, 26% of Hispanic vote, 29% of Hispanic, 29% of the Asian vote. And I know 11% doesn't sound like a great deal, but that's more than Mitt Romney got at the same time.
yeah, that's
Granted,
right.
he
Yeah,
was running against Obama, but basically, it's a big deal when there's such a massive disconnect between what the media says everyone believes and what happens on election day. And I feel it's exactly the same thing that's happened tonight.
yeah. It's like they haven't learned their lesson, really. Yeah, it's just, I suppose that's just the narrative that the mainstream media are trying to push out there in the hopes that they can change like the low information voters' minds. I think a big element coming in with the internet is things don't go away, and people have the ability to question what the mainstream media are saying and actually go and do some research and find out what the truth really is. And it's easy to get a look at it. There are plenty of people on the social media platforms. When Facebook and Twitter aren't trying to censor the information, but it's still easy enough to get where you can actually see both sides of the story and then come to your own conclusion about who's telling the truth and who's telling lies. And I think the mainstream media have been just caught out in too many lies, and so people, they tell these stories, and I think less and less people are believing it now, and more inclined to go find the information. And then we're seeing that when they're finding the truth, and then we're getting more votes for Trump. And yeah, I think as well another element for the votes coming through is it's probably could be one of the biggest voter turnouts in in recent history anyway. There's a lot of people coming out that are in their 50s and 60s who are voting for the first time. So that's definitely pushing up the votes on both sides, which is really interesting to see. So for a country that, claims to be the leaders of the free world, and you're finding out there's a lot of people that aren't exercising their right to, have the freedom to vote. But one thing this election's definitely brought out is, the young vote is definitely coming out in bigger numbers. You've got the black votes coming out in bigger numbers. You've got more Latino votes coming out, and then you've got baby boomers that may not have voted for 40 years, and they're turning out to vote as well. So, yeah, creates a really tight race, really.
Well, the thing is, at the end of the day, I think regardless of who they vote for, regardless of who wins, the fact that more people are getting engaged in the democratic process and in voting, has got to be commended. And
yeah, that's right.
That's the thing. I mean, especially when you have the limiting factors of in the midst of a pandemic, making it so much more difficult to move around and lessen the motivation for people to actually go out and do things. And I think for the good of democracy, and on the subject of democracy, that's the thing. There's a lot of partisanship nowadays, and I think a lot of people are afraid of what might happen tomorrow morning, if that's when the votes come in, or at the end of the month, if they count all the mail-in ones, when whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats finding out they've lost. We saw a right nightmare in 2016 when the Democrats were setting things on fire and shouting, "Not my president." And I think a lot of people are afraid of what will happen this time around too.
Yeah, so I mean, you got to look at where are these businesses boarding up? I mean, the White House has boarded up with a non-scalable wall. You've got businesses in Portland, Seattle, Detroit, Chicago, down in sort of Oregon. Where else are you looking around? Sort of South New York, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and those battleground states, and they're boarding up their businesses. They're taking their merchandise out so they don't lose it in case there are riots. But the thing, with maybe the exception of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, it's yet to be determined. But like, why are people in Portland boarding up their businesses and afraid they're going to lose everything? These are all Democrat strongholds. So you're not seeing people in Texas and Tennessee and we're at Kansas. You're not seeing them boarding up businesses afraid of what's going to happen if the election goes one way or the other. It's all in Democrat strongholds. So for me, that says a lot about the people, where they're voting and the kind of attitudes they're having. So, I mean, while it's a win for democracy that more people are coming out, when you're having one side saying, you vote for our candidate or we're going to burn your business down, that's a real tragedy for democracy. So, there's a win there. There's a bit of what seems to be unfortunate there, but I mean, you're not seeing, there's one side rioting, there's one side not. So, it's an interesting element. But
I think we just got to hope even that the damage isn't so as easily fixable when the whole thing blows over. But I'm watching the updates now. I see Trump is ahead by rather significant margins in Georgia and Nevada and Michigan and as well. Biden is still ahead of him in Arizona. Flipping that, 82% of the vote counted, and he's ahead by about 150,000 votes.
Yeah.
So, what's the time here in New Zealand at the moment? Just after 9 o'clock. So it's a good hour and a half, 2.5 hours since we knew the result this time back in 2016. I believe they called it for Trump about 6:30 p.m. our time. And it might take longer than that as the mail-in ballots were counted. But at the end of the day, I mean, I've just in closing, I mean, it's this horrible, in a lot of ways, this horrible time we live in when there's so much partisanship and, like you're saying about the riots and things like that. People are so intolerant now, and whether it's Trump or Biden who wins on the night, I don't see either victory really fixing that problem with America. The fact that so many people, rather than come to the table and have rational discussion about things, they'd rather just attack each other and smash businesses up.
Yeah, well, we can only hope that once the election's done, that whichever side wins, whichever side loses, that they can find some common ground and actually start getting some help out to the American people that need it. So, I mean, we know, Trump's been trying and trying to get billions and billions of, as he would say, billions and billions of
Billions
dollars
and
out to the
billions.
American people. And every attempt has been filibustered by Nancy Pelosi and just blocked. She's not interested. It's always wait till after the election. Let's see how the election goes, and then we'll decide what we're going to do for you. Which, to me, that's, she's looking out for herself and her cronies and not actually working for the American people, which was she put as the Speaker of the House to be. So, I mean, I've heard rumours that Nancy Pelosi said if the Republicans take the House, she'll retire. So we can only really pray for that. But last I looked, it was looking really good. So we'll see how we go. But the Senate might go to the Democrats. So I don't know how it would play out if Trump was to win, but the Democrats have the Senate and the House. I don't know whether we'll see much getting done in the next 4 years, but we'll have to see. But yeah, Georgia, I don't know. I mean, it's right on the line, really. It's only 1.6, 1.7% there, and in North Carolina. But I mean, Trump did a speech about half an hour ago, and he said he's pretty confident he's got victory in those two states, which means he only really needs one, maybe two, I think, of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And he's ahead by over 700,000 votes in Pennsylvania. And I think the reason for that is they just don't trust Joe Biden because he flip-flopped on fracking. He's sworn black and blue he's going to get rid of it. When he's in California, he goes to Pennsylvania, he says a completely different thing. And in the age of the internet again, these things don't go away and people can go back and revisit to see, well, what exactly did he say?
No doubt. They saw his comments when he got Beto O'Rourke on stage in Texas and said, well, like you see, it won't be the last you see of this man. You're going to take the care of the gun problem, aren't you? When O'Rourke had said in the primaries, we'll take your AR-15s away. We're going to take your guns. Don't try and pretend that we're not. So, hey, I mean, at least he's being honest about it. At least he's revealing his true character. Trump gets criticized for revealing his true character. But
well, it's rules for thee and not for me.
And hey, it's comments like that may well have cost Joe Biden and the Democrats the election tonight. Well, hey,
it very well could have. Yeah, I mean, it's coming down to the wire. I think, I don't know, I might be a bit more pessimistic and a bit more nervous about it, but it will come down to Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and we know both those candidates are campaigning hard in all three of those states. And Trump in particular, his campaigning in Pennsylvania is really paying off with a massive lead, but 47,000 people at his last rally in Pennsylvania, and a big chunk of that was just playing memes, Joe Biden memes. So having a good time and a laugh. So he was obviously feeling very...
The memes always help, and I think the main thing is, and it's been pointed out by a few people, but I think Trump in the last week, he did something like 25 rallies.
Yeah, he's doing upwards of 5 a day. Yeah.
And he was crisscrossing these so-called battleground states while Biden paid them very little attention. So at the end of the day, that sort of ground game, that sort of energy helps. Now, we're throwing a bit of an event here. We've been watching the results pretty nervously. In fact, we've got Fox News set up in this room that I'm looking at now, and CNN in the other. So hey, we got Trump haters and Trump supporters here tonight, and trying to keep it balanced. But hey, thank you very much for joining us, Evan.
Yeah, that's right. Well, hopefully I made a little bit of sense there, but it's just a beautiful old little Joe Blogg Trump supporter on the street. Yeah.
And I think that's what represents. I mean, look, he's from Kaikoura in New Zealand, but hey, look, it's the working class people, it's the average Joes that are the ones who voted for Trump, not the elitists, not these,
yeah, West Coast Ivory
academics
Tower.
and West
Yeah,
Coast Ivory Tower types. And yeah, that's if he wins tonight, that's what would have won it for him. And it's good to see that even all the way over here in New Zealand, we have people who can see that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I will finish off though. I'll say that
Go for it.
at the end of the day, whoever wins this election, the sun will rise tomorrow, and life will just go on the way it has the last few hundred years. So, what will be, and whoever wins, whoever loses, it's not the end of the world. So, yeah, we'll just hopefully everyone will remember that.
It scarcely affects us, does it? That's the main
That
thing.
well, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, yeah, the US dollar reaches us, so we'll just see what happens.
I'll just
But
log on to Sharesies and buy a few companies while they're down, but we'll see.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. I was thinking, yeah, should have bought a few American dollars back when our dollar was worth a lot more, and then see what happens and get the cash back. But
Exactly.
yeah.
All right. Hey, thank you very much for joining, Evan.
That's all right. My pleasure.
We'll catch you
Righto.
later.
You too. See ya.